Okay. Right, you're live, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Welcome, everybody. Nice to see you all. I'm starting the meeting with the following. This virtual meeting is being live streamed as a public meeting. It will also be recorded and the recording subsequently made available via the Council's website. In addition, under the openness of the local government bodies regulation 2014, other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting. The use of any such images or recordings is not under the Council's control. Please note that members of the public viewing that the meeting via the live stream can only see the person who is speaking. Also that it takes a second or so for Zoom to switch view to the person when they begin. Participants should please ensure that their microphone is muted when they are not speaking. So now I go on to see.
Trish, your camera's gone off.
Don't know why. That's it. Okay. Thank you. Okay, so I'd like to confirm that everybody's here. Starting with Tracy. Tracy?
Yeah, I'm here.
Can you hear and see us all?
Yes.
Thank you. Alan?
Yes, I can see and hear everybody.
Thank you very much. David? You there, David? Has anybody spoken to David? Do we know if he's here or?
I don't think David's here.
He doesn't seem to be here, but I've not received any apologies.
Okay. Okay. So the next, Councillor Brennan, can you hear me and see?
Hello, Chair. Yes, I can
Hi,
see and
nice
hear the
to see you.
proceedings. You too.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councillor Radford, can you hear and see me okay?
I can hear and see the proceedings. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Seaton?
I
you
can
hear
both
me?
see and hear, thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. And Yasmin, can you hear and see me?
Yes, I can, Trish. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, so now it's all the officers. Pete, can you hear and see me okay?
Yes, thank you, Trish. I can see and hear proceedings.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Alison, can you hear and see me okay?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can hear and see proceedings.
Thank you. Andrew, can you hear and see me okay?
Yes, Madam Chairman, I can hear and see you fine. Thank you.
Thank you. You're speaking very softly, Andrew.
Is that a little better?
Yes, a lot better. Thank you.
Okay,
Cheers.
Thank you.
Debbie, can you hear and see me okay?
Yes, I can hear and see you, Chair.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks a lot. Ian, can you hear and see me okay? Has anybody spoken to Ian? Is he with us? No. Okay, thank you. Neela, can you hear and see me?
I don't think she's here, Chair.
Okie dokie. Laura, can you hear and see me okay?
I can see and hear you. Thank you, Chair.
Cheers. And Ed, can you hear and see me okay?
Yes, I can see and hear you, Chair. Thank you.
Councillor Poland, can you hear and see me okay?
Hello there, Chair. Yes, I can see
Hi,
and hear
James.
proceedings.
You all right?
Yeah, not bad. How are you?
Right. First of all, do we have any apologies, Ed?
As I said, I haven't received any, but it does seem like Mr. Wright's not here.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. So proceed on to the meeting minutes of the previous meeting. So I'll ask you, Tracy. Oh, Tracy wasn't here last meeting. Do I still need her okay on that, Ed?
I think it's just the people who are at the
At the
meeting.
meeting, yeah. Alan, are you okay with the previous meeting's minutes?
Yes, no problem whatsoever.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, are you okay with previous meetings minutes?
Yes, I am. Thank you. And
Thank
thank
you.
you to Ed for responses to our questions from the last meeting as well.
I concur with that. Councillor Radford, can you hit?
So I'm happy with the meeting minutes.
You are, thank you. Councillor Seaton, are you okay with the minutes of the last meeting?
Okay with the minutes, thank you.
Thank you. And that's it. Thank you. So we're okay for it to be accepted. Right. Next thing is declaration of interest. If anybody has any declaration in any item of the business on the agenda which would affect them more than tenants or residents of the wards affected generally. Are there any persons present that is declaring of interest, please?
I would like to declare something.
Okay, Councillor Brennan.
Because I own my own home, it does not affect me personally, but if I were a social tenant, the pets policy would impact me quite severely, because I have 7 guinea pigs and 3 cats, and I feel that does colour my perspective and I ought to disclose it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ed, is it okay for Councillor Brennan to be in that agenda item?
I think as long as she approaches it with an open mind, then I think so. I don't think it's a pecuniary interest as such.
I don't think it is, Ed. Thank you. Sorry, Chair. Chair, I don't think it's pecuniary interest, but I do feel that it impacts my view of the situation, and I've tried to take that into account when reading the whole thing and very much retain an open mind.
Thank you. Thank you for disclosing. Right. So the next item is the pets.
Excuse me. I've got 2 geckos. I've read the thing. They're 2 pets, but it shouldn't affect whatsoever anything that might go on with the pets policy.
Thank you for disclosing that, Alan. Thank you. Any more? No. So could I just ask, when Andrew does the reports, can you make a note of the page that you would probably like to discuss or ask any questions after the report, please? Thank you. Sorry, Andrew, are you there?
I am, yes.
Thank you so much. It's all yours. You are.
Can everybody hear me clearly? Yep, thank you.
Thank you.
Do shout if you can't, and obviously I'll try to shout a little louder than I am doing. Madam Chairman, thank you very much for this. It probably doesn't surprise me that already I'm presenting something which I think we all anticipated would be an item that would attract a lot of interest and debate, and indeed going through the process of consultation that brought this report and draft policy up to members today, I think it illustrates that this is something that does attract a lot of interest, both personally on behalf of individuals, but on behalf of all our tenants as well. If I may be permitted, I don't intend for time purposes really to go through the entire pets policy, because I assume that members will have read this already, and I would not want to waste anybody's time by doing something that I think is probably unnecessary. So instead, with your permission, Madam Chairman, I will bring out some points in my covering report that I feel are important to probably set the scene of where our thoughts were in producing this draft policy, and then afterwards happy to take any questions or consider any comments from any members as a result of that. Yeah, is everyone happy with the way I'm going to approach this? Okay, thank you very much. Right, I think the first thing to say is that the council does not have an existing pets policy, and to my knowledge, it never has. What we do have at the moment is a relatively brief piece in the existing tenancy agreement covering pet ownership, and that is attached to this report as an appendix. And we also have a set of operational procedures for tenancy management staff when dealing with matters of pet ownership that are either raised by tenants themselves or neighbours of tenants who have pets and which may be causing some problem. So, the impetus, therefore, for a written down rigorous pets policy came from, I think, two areas which I've set out in point 3.2 of my covering report. One being there's a lack of, I would argue, sufficient detail in the existing in the existing tenancy agreement, I beg your pardon, on pet ownership. And in the absence of an all-embracing policy behind that, the existing operational procedures are such that there is a risk always of different interpretation being given to those operational procedures by different members of staff, which then increasing the risk of inconsistent application of what there is already, and therefore the final risk that different tenants receive a different standard of service and different decisions are made on an individual basis. So one of the principal objectives of having a pets policy is to create an environment where consistency can be established in the application of that policy, and can be used also in conjunction with the tenancy agreement, which members may be aware is currently being rewritten, and we hope to present that new tenancy agreement to members at the May meeting, which is excuse me, the next meeting of HMAB. And one of the things I've tried to do is to tie the two together so that the pets policy remains the defining document, and the clauses in the tenancy agreement, though you will probably see in May, are more detailed than what we have in the existing tenancy agreement, but are sufficiently broad so as to accommodate any change in policy that we might want to put in place in the future without what will be a very, very complicated and long-winded exercise in actually changing the tenancy agreement elements of pets policy, which would require extensive consultation and something that we are going to undergo later this year with the new tenancy agreement, and really don't want to do on a regular basis because it's an extremely time-consuming exercise. So to contain the main elements of the pets policy in the policy document itself, it's much easier to change that and leave the most broad principal points in the tenancy agreement that probably are unlikely to change in any event, even if elements of the pets policy change in the future. So that's the sort of position that we've come from in formulating this new pets policy. Now, as members will be aware, it is quite extensive, and like anything, it's taken quite some time in drafting. And because it's it's quite contentious a matter, because of the individual relationship people will have when this is applied to them, I think it's fair to say that it's attracted, a lot of scrutiny, and rightly so, going through consultation with officers. And then the policy as currently drafted went to, well, not as currently drafted actually, but went to CHRF in March last year, just before, unfortunately, we had to stop CHRF because of the lockdown, etc. But CHRF gave it a very, very thorough going over. I was very grateful for that, and certain changes were made as a result of that. So the policy that members are considering today has actually been through some degree of tenant consultation already in the form of CHRF, and I'm very glad that we managed to do that last year. So having gone through that first level of scrutiny, and certain changes were made. So I think it's first to reiterate that pet ownership is a contentious issue, and in presenting this draft policy, I am in no way trying to claim that we've got it entirely right, because it will always attract some degree of criticism, either for being too prescriptive or not being prescriptive enough, and therefore leaving open to abuses of the pets policy that then can lead to difficulties in enforcing it when people do abuse it. Because I think there's no doubt about it that people's lives can be made quite miserable by someone having a pet that is out of control or even dangerous. And this policy is, in its probably arguably very prescriptive sense, is trying to help us to be able to enforce it better in those very, very, very small cases where we have to. So many of the prescriptive elements of this are very much in order for us to be able to use them as a measure of last resort, and not be as rigorous and as prescriptive about them in the normal application of the policy for the vast majority of tenants. Okay, so if I can just draw out some of the main elements of the pets policy. It's set into a number of sections, and so I will go through them very quickly with you and draw out some elements I think may be worth just concentrating on. Firstly, we have the objectives of the policy, and again, I won't go through those, but it attempts to set out why we're doing this. The second section is actually who this policy applies to, and it applies to all our tenants. It also applies for tenants who people who are yet to be tenants, so it will apply to all new tenants being signed up. Doesn't and it can't apply to leaseholders, because leaseholders are governed by the terms of their lease, so we can't apply this to leaseholders. Section 3 is the most important part of the policy, because it actually sets out the policy statement and the policy details. So I'll just go through, if I may, some of the main points of this. And the first thing to say is that we are saying that anyone who wishes to keep a pet must seek and obtain our written permission before doing so. And I think it's a fair statement to make, even though I think we have to accept in all aspects of this, there will be people who don't abide by it. and as I said earlier, this policy is very meant for those people whose non-abidance, adherence to it, causes a problem to somebody else, and thereby we can take some action in enforcing that non-adherence. So that's the first thing that we will ask. We're also saying that there'll be some pets for which permission will never be given in any circumstances at all. And one example is that any dog that is covered by the Dangerous Dogs Act of 1991, which lists 4 breeds of dog which are considered dangerous. And so we're saying that in no circumstances will we ever give permission for those dogs to be allowed to be kept by our tenants. We're also saying there's a couple of others that we won't give permission for, one of which might seem quite innocuous, but if anyone's ever lived in rural circumstances, it most certainly isn't necessarily, is someone keeping a cockerel, because they can make people's lives, especially in the small hours of the night, very difficult indeed. We're also saying that we won't give permission for pets that will be used for commercial breeding purposes as well. It goes on to say that certain properties will, by their construction and their nature, will attract restricted pet permissions. And I think probably one of the most contentious aspects of this policy, and which obtained the largest change in it when it went through CHRF last year, is the policy on pet ownership in sheltered accommodation. And this often polarizes opinion, both on the side of officers, professionals, and tenants, on where we should stand on this, because traditionally, historically, there has been tended to be a blanket ban of pets, and I'm talking mainly here cats and dogs in sheltered accommodation. By the very nature of it, there are extensive internal communal parts where the inability of tenants to actually provide direct outside space for their animals to go and perform their natural functions without going through internal common areas doesn't exist. And traditionally there's been a bit of a paternalistic, if I may say, attitude towards pet ownership, dog and cat ownership in sheltered accommodation, is that, well, you know, are elderly people capable of looking after these pets, and what happens if they suddenly become incapable of looking after them? What do we do then, and how are we going to handle them? So in some respects, the sort of most risk-averse approach has traditionally been, well, we just ban them all together, and then we don't have any problem with them. I think it's fair to say that thinking on this subject has become more enlightened, if I may use that word, over the past few years, where the therapeutic benefits of pet ownership in the elderly, especially elderly people who live on their own, have been proven to be, I think, quite undoubtedly very beneficial, both for the psychological, mental well-being of people, but also for their physical health as well. There has been, you know, a number of studies carried out that concluded that people's physical health is improved by pet ownership. And therefore, nowadays, I think there is a slightly more liberal attitude given towards pet ownership in sheltered accommodation. And, you know, regardless of the fact that all the potential problems that I've just outlined haven't actually gone away. And when we first drafted this policy, we sort of decided that we would carry on with a blanket ban on pet ownership in sheltered accommodation. But when this went to CHRF, there was a very robust debate on the matter, and members of CHRF felt that it was unfair, and we should look at that again. So what we ended up agreeing on as a compromise was, as it is actually now worded in the pets policy, that generally speaking, we still will not allow pet ownership in shelter schemes unless there is direct access onto open space, so preventing the pet having to be taken through internal communal space in order to go out and perform its natural functions. Some might say it was too small a compromise, and we should have been more liberal in our attitude. Some people might still think that it's a step too far and we should still ban it completely. But that's what was agreed at CHRF. So what members have in front of them is the result of that discussion and that compromise. So that's probably one of the main areas of contention in the policy statement. The rest of the policy is probably more incidental stuff. I would just draw members' attention to section 7, because obviously when this policy is put in place, we've got to decide how we treat all our existing tenants, many of whom will have pets, and many of those pets will be there as a result of permission not being sought as much as permission having been sought, and we have to look at how we deal with those. The proposal in section 7 is that we will effectively allow pets to remain in properties if people contact us and effectively declare them, and if broadly they do not violate the terms of the existing pets policy. So we want to take apply a relatively light touch to this. I think as much as anything else, we don't have the resources to go all out on hundreds and hundreds of tenants on their existing pet ownership, but clearly we have to take some sort of position with existing tenants, and section 7 deals with that. So, Madam Chairman, that's basically our stated position in the pets policy. I think I've covered everything I really wanted to do. I'm conscious of time. I think it's time for me now to be quiet and take comments and questions from members.
Thank you, Andrew. Is there anybody that would like to discuss, ask any questions on this? Alan?
Hello there. Yes, I was just wondering if you could add vivarium to aquarium, because it's normally very much the same size. Because I noticed that on one of these it says that no more than 2 pets would be allowed, but some geckos, well, obviously my interest is geckos, lizards. A male gecko lives in a very chauvinistic world, and normally should have 2 to 3 females, otherwise it gets aggressive. So I wonder if that could be covered by having vivarium stroke aquarium rather than just aquarium.
May I just ask through the chair? I don't have a dictionary definition of vivarium, but I'm assuming
it's basically for lizards.
Okay, might it also include spiders and other reptiles and snakes and similar creatures?
I've never kept a spider. And the only knowledge I have of snakes is that they're normally kept when they're asleep in an aquarium, basically. and normally allowed out or whatever. Other times, I cannot. I cannot comment on snakes. All I can comment on basically is lizards.
I'm very, very happy to consider adding something in there that will help accommodate those tenants who have pets of that nature.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Any comments, questions?
I've got my hand up.
So, oh, sorry, Councillor Radford.
See them.
Thank you.
See it? Can you see the yellow hand?
I can, thank you. Sorry.
All right. I wasn't sure whether you'd be able to. Right.
No, I'm looking at your face rather than the hand. I apologise.
All right. It's all right. We're all getting used to this. Right. The one thing I've got was when you said in sheltered accommodation with outside space. I've got no problem with that. But do we need to make sure as a condition that they clear up after their dogs or cats? I mean, cats, you can't usually see where they've gone, but dogs, because I am mindful with me councillor head on, I have an enormous amount of complaints about dog owners not clearing up after themselves. If it's in their own garden, that's bad enough. But if it's in communal areas, which it will be in sheltered accommodation, do we need to get a clause in there that if they have a pet and it's out in communal areas, I mean, the outside communal areas, they must clean up after it?
If I may, Madam Chairman, direct members to section 3.6 2D.
3.6.
Sorry, 3.62D.
Well, mine only goes up to 3.5. So where am I? What section?
In the actual policy.
Wait a minute.
Policy, section 3.6 2D requires all tenants seeking permission to keep a pet will be required, in addition to completing an application, sign a declaration and undertaking. This will include the following conditions, and this is for it to clean up after the pet and eliminate any offensive smells. So, Madam Chairman, I would say that very genuine and understandable comment made by Councillor Radford is covered in the policy.
Yeah, I missed that, I must admit. What proviso have we got if they don't clear up after the pet? They are causing problems.
Well, it will be a matter of normal tenancy management, that we would have a process through operational procedures of contacting the tenant, explaining to them what has happened, telling them that they're in breach of their tenancy agreement through the pets policy, and basically telling them to stop not doing what they should be doing. We then have to have some sort of incremental approach to what we do if that doesn't happen. We do have a range of powers that we can apply to breaches of tenancy and that fall far short of taking possession action against the tenants, and things like, and you know, probably Peter, who's probably got a wider knowledge of this, things like community protection notices can be served on the tenant, which actually have some, quite a good degree of legal clout.
Very nice. Thank you.
I hope it doesn't come to that, but we do have those powers and we will apply them.
Right, thank you. And the other thing is, where you've got dangerous dogs, and I think it's Alan who said about not aquarium, but anyway,
vivarium.
What about dangerous snakes? Because sometimes people have snakes, and you do hear, don't you, that they've escaped. So should we have something in there about dangerous snakes?
There is. I'm trying to find it.
I must admit, when I read it, I was getting my head so confused because I'm not into pets. I've only got one cat, and that was my granddaughter's I got landed with.
There is. I'll attempt to find it, but it's difficult while I'm trying to talk, Madam Chairman.
Yeah, that's all right.
That we are prohibiting any venomous.
Right. Okay, that's all right. As long as it's covered, Andrew, I'm quite happy. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. Tracy?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you.
I just want to ask, you've said about sheltered flats, but what about flats that aren't sheltered? Are they still, they can't have pets if they've got to go through a communal area to get to the outside? Is it still with normal flats? Because it just says sheltered flats in this, and I think that's quite confusing.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I think the principal difference between our sheltered accommodation schemes and other blocks of flats is that the latter do not have internal communal areas. They generally, their front door goes into an external common area leading to a front door. So it's not, they're not having to take their cat or dog through corridors and communal space within the scheme in order to get out of it. So there is quite a distinct difference there, and that's why we make the differentiation between sheltered accommodation, because they're built, those schemes are built so very differently from anywhere else.
Yeah, I'm sort of thinking about, because I'm on the Belfoundry area, and we go out of our front door, we go down, well, I go down 1 step, these other people have to come down 2 stairs, and then go out the front door to get to the outside. Does that still class as they can't have pets?
No, that's
Okay.
not the intention.
Okay, well, it's quite confusing, so I think that needs clarifying wherever that is.
Thank you. Thank you. I will have another look at that, and if I can put some clarifying statements in there, then I will do so.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew.
Councillor Brennan, would you like to speak? Sorry.
Thank you. Just let me get my hand down, or I'll leave it up for half an hour. I've got a few questions, if that's all right. Some of it's already been covered. I did want to ask for clarification about what was internal and not for other accommodation, not non-sheltered, but I think you've covered that already. I am a little bit concerned about a couple of things that you've raised. First of all, in terms of the purpose of this policy and having it separate to the tenancy agreement, but the tenancy agreement referring to it, you mentioned that makes it easier to change without extensive consultation. As a councillor, I'm quite concerned by that. You know, I think that policies should be consulted on, and yes, it does feel onerous, but actually it's for a reason. And it worries me that you are then able to potentially make some quite drastic changes without and change something that for a lot of people is very important to them without consulting on a change to the tenancy agreement. So that concerns me. Another point I'd like to raise, if it's okay, if you're all right to address them both at once, is just considering very carefully every aspect of the policy in the context of its purpose. And, you know, I'm sure that we can all agree that the purpose of the policy, as well as to ensure fairness and consistency, is to prevent damage to homes and nuisance to neighbours. And I think there may be aspects of this that go beyond that, particularly the 2-pet limit on smaller animals. Alan's already mentioned geckos and lizards. You know, I have guinea pigs that you can keep in pairs. They like to be in herds. And, you know, a family that perhaps had a cat under the policy wouldn't then be able to get 2 guinea pigs, which you could keep very comfortably without causing any problems to neighbours or to the property itself. And lastly, just a concern about returning to the purpose of the policy. You said that it's there in order that you can enforce against those who are in breach of it in a way that is causing a nuisance to people. I am concerned that having a blanket policy in order to do that, particularly with this 6-month time period in which people can inform you, has the potential to generate some upset and concern amongst tenants, and potentially to decrease trust with landlord services. If people are put in a position where, you know, am I going to have to get rid of my guinea pigs if I tell you I've got a cat and 2 guinea pigs? That could cause quite a lot of anxiety. And if people decide, oh, well, do you know what, I'll seek forgiveness rather than permission, is that then going to bleed into other areas of the tenancy agreement? It just seems to diminish that sort of mutually trusting relationship that normally exists between landlord and tenant. So I'm a little bit concerned about that. Sorry, there were 3 points there, weren't there?
Okay, thank you very much. I'll try to address one each in turn.
Thank you.
Firstly, I'd like to try to allay your concerns over the consultation and the impression I may have given, which was most certainly not intended, that we're doing it this way in order to allow ourselves a free ride anytime we wanted to change the policy in the future. And we just
I'll have to ask your mummy.
I beg one. Oh, sorry. And we would just be able to do it without consultation. That's absolutely not the case. Any policy that we either bring in or wish to revise will go through a formal consultation process, namely on an officer basis, and then through CHRF, and then through HMAB, and then through Cabinet if it's deemed appropriate to do that. That won't change. The problem for us, if everything is contained in the tenancy agreement, that if we want to change then any element of that tenancy agreement, the consultation process we have to go through is a far more rigorous and statutorily constrained and defined process than we will have to if we want to change a policy. And also that means applying that change retrospectively to existing tenants. And yeah, having gone through this process on a number of occasions in the past, I'm very aware of what that actually entails when you want to change even a small part of the tenancy agreement. You are bound by very extensive, time-consuming, rigorous statutory consultation requirements under the Housing Act 1985. And the application of those changes retrospectively are extremely long-winded and time-consuming. By putting that into a policy change rather than tenancy agreement change is not diminishing the need to consult in any way at all. It's just making that consultation process and then the implementation of any changes that result from that process much easier to do by comparison to if you had to do it through the tenancy agreement. So it is not a way of getting around consulting on any future changes, far from it. It's doing it in I would argue, a better and easier way for everybody in order to do that. So that's the first point. The second point you raise is your concern that some of the aspects go beyond what the remit of the PETS policy should do so. And I have a great deal of sympathy with this, and this was one of the really hard things we grappled with when we drafted this policy. The extent to which our prescription went, and I don't think that there's a right or wrong answer to this, and I'm quite happy to consider changes to it if members feel that it goes too far, or yes, similarly if it doesn't go far enough. Just specifically, however, on the sort of like 2 pet limit policy, if you change that, I mean, what do you change it to? Do you change it to 3? Do you change it to 4? Do you change it to 5? And at some point, if you feel, as I excuse me, as I think we do, I do anyway, that there should be a limit on pet ownership just because of the consequences if there is no limit, potential consequences if there is no limit, then where do you stop? Now, and then if you want to put certain types of pet outside that limit, such as aquarium fish, then where do you draw that line? Now, I'm happy to concede that that line might have been drawn in the wrong place, and for members to suggest changing that line somewhere, but I would be uncomfortable removing the blanket limit on pet ownership, because I think that you're going to be hostage to fortune then on exploitation of that lack of a pet limit, and then the difficulties that might cause you in the future. And then the final point that you, through the chair, you make, Councillor Brennan, on you've got a relatively prescriptive blanket policy that seeks to protect those from those who seek to and not adhere to it, and therefore you penalise the vast majority of people. And again, I recognise the position that you're coming from here, and this is why I said in trying to apply it to existing tenants, we would want to apply the lightest touch possible with them with their existing pets. And as a pet owner myself, I know how important pets are to people, and the vast majority of people are responsible pet owners. And in some ways, you could say this pet policy is not for them, just as the vast majority of clauses in our tenancy agreement are not relevant to the vast majority of our tenants, because they will stick to those conditions anyway. They're to enable us to take effective action against those very small numbers of people who willfully and maliciously refuse to comply with them. And again, the last thing we want to do is engender an atmosphere of lack of trust or anxiety, and I think the way to do that is how we apply the policy to existing tenants. And I'm quite happy to develop what I would call liberal and light touch processes to that for existing tenants. And in the end, are we going to take the example that you cited? Are we going to take a very hard line against a responsible pet owner who has 1 cat and 3 guinea pigs, for example, and where all other circumstances cause us no concern at all? And the answer of that, of course, is no, we're not. But then, the existing pet owner who has 10 pythons, 4 tarantulas, and 2 large dogs in a 1-bed flat, are we going to be concerned about that? Yes, we are. And it's all about balance here. I do accept what you're saying, and we must take all steps to prevent any lack of trust being built up as a result of applying this.
Thank you very much. And my apologies that my internet signal cut out partway through your response. I think I was able to get the vast majority of it anyway. Thanks very much for your responses. I think in terms of applying the lightest touch, the fact of having this policy and telling people and telling the tenants that you have 6 months to tell us about your pets, you can't at that point also, it would seem quite counterproductive to say, but we're not really going to do anything about it unless you're causing a problem. You can't really say that. So I think it's inevitably going to cause some anxiety to your average responsible tenant who is keeping their pets responsibly. And I also think that perhaps it's worth considering that those tenants who are causing a nuisance with their pet ownership, whether that's an environmental health problem, whether it's dangerous or noisy for their neighbours, are already in breach of their tenancy agreement, not by nature, not by virtue of how many pets they have, but because of how they're keeping them, that is not in a responsible way, that is already covered in other parts of the tenancy agreement.
That may well be the case, and we will know these people, and you're quite right, we may be taking action against them as well. All I can really come back to you and say is that we are very, very, I think, sensitive to people's own individual situations, and we'll make our best endeavours to apply this in a sensible and a pragmatic way to existing tenants. And the last thing we want to do is antagonise and endanger what is, we have a good relationship with the vast majority of our tenants. So I mean, thank you for your comments, and okay. I do understand where you're coming from on those.
I wonder if there is a way to ensure that the wording, both within the policy and in the correspondence to tenants, giving them notice of the policy, could be done in such a way to ensure that people are aware that it will be, that the policy may be applied in cases where there are problems arising from their pet ownership. I'd be interested to know as well what other members of the board think regarding the numbers.
I will certainly take that on board. And
thank you.
Are you happy with that, Councillor Brennan? Or
I am happy with that. Yes, I am keen, Chair. I don't know if you could open this up just to know what other members think about the numbers in the policy, the 2-pet limit, particularly for smaller animals, and if that should be looked at.
Right. Could any member comment or give their opinion on said thing that Councillor Brennan has just commented on, please? Do people have a particular opinion or something they would like to say in that area about the amount?
Trish, there are quite a lot of hands up, Trish.
There are. I'm just trying to close this particular area so we can move on.
Okay, otherwise, if it's about this particular area, I'm trying to cast my mind back to my young family. And now I've just got one dog, but I had 3 children. And they all had pets of their own. Well, it was called their own, but Mummy looked after them, as in rabbits and guinea pigs and hamsters, etc. So it is going to be difficult. And for that tenant that that is causing a nuisance, and they are living next to somebody that they know has got 6 animals, but you are using the policy on that particular tenant because they are perceived to be a nuisance. And a lot of pet owners don't necessarily perceive themselves as a nuisance, like others do. So I know that the line has got to be drawn somewhere. I really do know. It's a bit like COVID and who can meet what and how many. The line has to be drawn, and it might as well be drawn at 2 than 4 because there's somebody that's going to have 5. So I understand why you've done it. That scenario of you enforcing it on one neighbour because of the perceived nuisance and not on the other one, I don't know whether that would leave you wide open to controversy there or a bit of reputational damage. That's all I've got to say on it. But as I say, the line has to be drawn somewhere.
Right, thank you. Excuse me. Thank you, Councillor Seaton. May I ask Pete to come in as you're waiting, and I'm sure you do have answers to some of these queries and thoughts at the moment, Pete. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to suggest that perhaps we take some of the comments that have been made already in respect of scenario cat and 2 guinea pigs, because actually I can understand the point in that respect, and so perhaps we take it away and come back with some perhaps more finessed wording around the policy and bring that back to the board perhaps at the next meeting.
I would agree. Do all the members agree that I think that is the best scenario, as it gives both Andrew and everybody at HMAB the chance to see what comes forward from what's been said today. Are we okay with that?
Yeah. Do you not, though, Chairman, want to see what anybody else thinks about the policy? I mean, I'm happy for an increased amount for the small animals because I can't see a problem with that. But I think most of the problems that we have as councillors dealing with is the a large amount of dogs that people have that are allowed to run around, and barking dogs. I think, to me, the biggest issue is dogs, and not so much guinea pigs and rabbits, unless they're in the garden and smelling and not cleared up. But I'm sure that can be looked at. But I just think, it's the dogs issue. I think that as a councillor, I have more problems, people saying that they've got dogs, 4 or 5 dogs running in the garden, not clearing up, barking. They're left in the house all day when the owners go to work, and it's going to be increased now when people are going to start going back to work after they've been at home or for nearly a year. I think that, to me, is the part that's got to be looked at. And I mean, going chickens at Cockerell, yes, but I don't think you're supposed to only have 2 chickens anyway. Chickens like to have about half a dozen, don't they, chickens? That's what the rule is. And like Councillor Brennan said about guinea pigs not being on their own, you should have more than 1 guinea pig. I don't know. I think it has got to be looked at. That's my opinion. And I'm just going to draw my curtains now.
May I just suggest, in view of obviously the feeling, the thoughts of HMAB, which obviously I'm suggesting that we take pets policy and pursue it in all the ways that obviously members would like to at the next meeting. I don't actually think we're able to cram it all in, because it is obviously a serious item, this policy, and it matters an awful lot from both Charnwood side, tenant side, for it to be right. So that right from the beginning.
I think using species rather than a blanket pet, going with the actual species of the pet, whether it's a rodent or a...
Chair, could I possibly comment?
Dog.
Of course, please.
Thank you. So I take absolutely, it's been a really interesting discussion. I thank members for your comments. I mean, the thing that stood out for me was when we're talking about sort of a number 2 rather than 3 rather than 4. Would members, Councillor Brennan's obviously got an interest in this, be more comfortable if we use the term reasonable So a reasonable number of pets. So clearly, if you're in a 1-bed flat and you've got 20 dogs, that is not a reasonable number of pets, if you see what I mean. But then it's not prescriptive. Each case is different because each circumstance is different. And trying to have something that prescriptive in a policy which covers a 1-bed sit to a 4-bed house perhaps isn't necessarily the way forward. So would members potentially be more comfortable with the term reasonable number of pets? And then obviously it would depend on the circumstance.
May I very briefly just respond, Madam Chairman, that very quickly to Councillor Poland. I absolutely understand where you're coming from there. The problem is one person's interpretation of the word reasonable is not necessarily someone else's, and one of the reasons why we're trying to bring this in is to make the application of the policy more able to be consistent by those doing it, namely our tenancy officers. And my concern on that would be that it is open to such a relatively wide range of interpretation as to what reasonable means. I have an idea of what reasonable would be. It might not necessarily be yours or anybody else's, but I'm very happy to look around, probably loosening or defining by type of pet numbers, or lifting a ban on numbers on various type of pet, rather than just applying, say, something like reasonable. I'm happy to take members' comments on that suggestion.
Right, Tracy, can I ask, do you feel...
What I'm going to say is, can we, anybody's got any more suggestions, can we email them to Andrew, because this is sort of dragging on and we've got to get on. So if anybody wants to, Andrew, is that okay if people email you any more comments? I know Ed will have got down most of what we've said, but if anybody else, I think it's just dragging on a bit now, if that's okay.
Yeah, and point is, if we go on and on, it's a very important issue. We have to have it right, or do as well as we can do. Let's Andrew have another look, see what's possible, give us a chance to discuss it further. It's obviously a very serious subject. So I think our best thing to do, as Tracy said, the way to go would be to email all your thoughts, suggestions, give Andrew time to have a look through feelings and thoughts of today's discussion, and bring it back to the board at the next meeting. Is everybody okay with that? Because certainly we're going round and round. We all realise it is a serious subject, and I don't think today we're going to get any further. But then, given the chance of the next meeting, we've all got time to think about it, what's been said and why and everything else, and come back with
Chair, can I just say something? Poor old Alan Davis has gone from finger to pencil the whole time, trying to flag and attract your attention, and I think he's got something to say.
I've got ready with that, but could we possibly have the email address, please?
Yes, it's andrew.staton, STATON, at charnwood.gov.uk.
Yeah, at charnwood.gov. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, sorry to keep you waiting, Alan.
That's all right.
Trying to do what I consider to be the right thing for us all, because I realise it's a very emotive subject, but at the same time, I do think we need time to think about all that's been said and see which way we're going at the next meeting. So thank you all so very much for your thoughts and your feelings and everything else on it. And we will definitely bring it back to the next meeting. Thank you. So now we move.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So now we move on to item 5, which is sheltered housing review. So we'd like to ask Alison if she would like to do the report for us, please, Alison. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Thank you very much for inviting me back to the meeting. And I know it's been some time since I've been to the meeting to present the update on the sheltered housing review. The Sheltered Housing Review started a number of years ago, and as you're all aware, the Strategic Director set up a project and was project sponsor, and we have councillors on the project board that help us to make the decisions and follow the action plan as to what we're trying to achieve. We all know that there's a number of schemes that aren't fit for purpose, where people actually haven't got their own bathrooms within their schemes, within their own flats. So the first part of carrying out the review was just really to agree a sheltered housing standard, which we did through consultation with tenants, and then we came up with the final version, which we've then assessed each scheme against. This was all taken through the board and approved by the board, and then the first scheme that we highlighted as our priority was St Michael's Court in Thurmaston. And I am in a way ashamed to say that it was more than a year ago that we actually went to the residents to explain that they were our first priority. And obviously we have been impacted by COVID, and it has had a huge impact on my workload and my service workload in taking this review forward. So I can only apologise for that. What we have been doing though behind the scenes, because there was a number of surveys, etc., we needed to carry out that we couldn't because of social distancing and the COVID impact, we have carried on looking at what designs we could produce for the site, bearing in mind that we wanted to increase the number. We want to meet the sheltered housing standards so that everyone has their own self-contained flat with their own kitchen, their own bathroom. It's at least 50 square metres, so they've got more space to live in. There's good amenity areas, scooter stores, because obviously that's changed over the years as to what people use for mobility, etc. So I think there was a lot of things that we've taken into consideration when we've been prioritising and looking at what the plans should look like. Pete and I have attended a number of meetings with planning to come up with a design, and with our architects. We did appoint ARC as our project management of the scheme as we're taking this forward. And we've now got another set of plans, a design that we're looking at that does provide us with 29 units. We're just putting the finishing touches to this before this goes back to planning. There's obviously a number of issues that we need to consider with planning. We've got the height of the building, we've got the amenities surrounding it, we've got a church next door, the conservation area. So there's lots of things that we've had to take into consideration, with the main aim of providing self-contained units and also trying to provide more units on the site. So the aim is for the final plans to go back to planning this Friday. And to see what the outcome of that is before we then go back to the project board, discuss the options in relation to the plans, and then that will link in with any financial aspects that Pete needs to consider as part of the business planning process, before we will then come back out to residents to have a discussion with them about the plans to get their views. So it won't be a final decision at that point, but we need to go through the board process first, make sure that we can consider the financial issues with the proposed scheme, and then we'll come and talk to residents. A newsletter has gone out to residents just to, one, really apologise for the delays, and to say that as soon as we get to a process, I suppose a point in time that we have got a timetable, we will share that with them, and we will go out, show them the designs. Ideally, we'd like to do that on a face-to-face basis. So it depends on how we progress through. Obviously, we've got the roadmap now, haven't we, from the government getting us out of lockdown, etc. So ideally, it would be nice to do a face-to-face meeting, but I think we've got to judge when we're at a point that a decision can be made and we can start consulting with residents. And that's my update, really. I don't know if you've got any questions, and I do apologise again. And it is very frustrating that it's taken this long, and I do feel for the residents in the scheme.
I think we totally understand, Alice, and it's sort of it's really decided, excuse me, it's decided with lots of things by the lockdown. People are completely, at the mercy of all this, and I think really it's been very, very difficult for officers to do much at all. And to be fair, I think it'll be a lot easier when things start to lift.
Thank
you.
If
I may ask, Councillor Seaton, you would like to speak?
Yes, first of all, I would like to thank Alison for sending out the information letter. about it. And I think we need to be aware that on the sheltered housing scheme, as you say, it was a year ago, quite a lot of those residents, by the fact that they're in sheltered housing, do have memory issues, and you know, time, a whole year for them will just, some go past in a blink, but some really drag out because they were looking forward to it happening. So I'm very pleased that a letter has gone out. It's unfortunate that something didn't go out sooner, but hindsight's a wonderful thing. But of course, we've always also had other problems in that sheltered accommodation as well that have exacerbated the problem. But thank you very much for doing the letter that you have done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any more questions, comments, anything? May I just ask you, Alison, the sheltered housing standard, is it a verbal standard or is it a written one?
It's a written down standard, and I can get that circulated to the board. And each scheme that we've got has been assessed against that. So it's identified the areas that we can't, where they don't meet the standard. I think one of the things that we made quite clear in the consultation was this was aspirations of residents for a scheme. What we can't promise is that each scheme will be able to provide everything within that standard, because it might not be feasible on a particular site. So I can get that circulated to you so that you've got a copy of the standard, and it's been through the various residents groups, so it has been signed off. And I think I might have brought it to you, but we are talking probably a couple of years ago now. So I will get it recirculated.
That would be marvellous. Thank you so very much for that. Really appreciate it, as I'm sure all the members do. Thank you. I'm sorry you've had to wait so long. We do that. Councillor Brennan, would you like to speak?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just wonder if I may, Alison, thank you so much for bringing your report, and I'm really glad that things are getting back on track and that you're going to planning. Do you mean that the plans will be submitted to planning to the officers this Friday, or are you aware of when it would be going to planning committee? And I just wanted to check as well. I think it's important that there's a contingency plan in terms of this year, and you know, the uncertainty around when social distancing will lift. That you have a plan, which I'm sure you could share with us, about when building work will start. And you know, yes, it would be nice to have face-to-face consultation with the residents first. But if the pandemic continues, and I mean, heaven forbid, we could be facing restrictions of some sort for years. We need to be sort of finding ways to work around it and not letting it hold up ordinary life any more than it needs to. So what's the sort of time frame that you're looking at, regardless of the easing of restrictions, to actually start with the building work?
I can't give you a time frame, because at the moment the plans that are going to planning on Friday are to see if they actually meet the planning requirements in relation to design, conservation, etc. Before they then go to the project board to be considered, before a planning application could even be put in. Once we know we've got a design, then we'll be in a position to then put a timetable in place. So I think that I can come back to a future meeting to share that with you once we do have a timetable, and we can provide the details of when the build might start. As far as consultation, we obviously use virtual means. We can get copies taken to the scheme and left in an area for people to look at. I know there's notice boards that people can walk past. Whether the communal areas will be open at that point, again, we need to look at where we are with the roadmap and how we can best provide the information to residents.
That's brilliant. Thank you, Alison. Cheers.
Are we all happy with everything that Alison said? We're all happy, no more discussion or queries or anything on that? No. Thank you very much, Alison. Really appreciate it. As I say, I'm so sorry you've had to wait so long.
That's okay. Thank you very
For
much.
your report. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye. Right. I'm thinking that possibly because of the time elements, and I am also very aware that Councillor Radford has another meeting to go to, with the board's permission, could we possibly postpone the fly tipping on the agenda today and take it forward to the next meeting? I do feel we need the time to discuss the exempt item, which is very important.
Sorry, Chair. Before we decide that, can we just make sure that the Chair, make sure that the board are okay to note the previous report, the report on sheltered housing?
Thank you, Ed. Yes, of course. Could I ask Tracy, are you okay with what Alison has said in her report, and for it to go forward to Cabinet?
Yeah, that's fine.
Thank you. Alan, are you okay for it to go forward to
It's fine, no
Cabinet?
problem.
Councillor Brennan, are you okay for it to go forward?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Radford, are you okay for it to go forward to Cabinet?
Yes, sorry, I couldn't find my mute button.
Councillor Seaton, are you okay for it to go forward?
I am, thank you.
To Cabinet. And Yasmin, are you okay for it to go forward to Cabinet?
I am, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. So, is the board okay for us to postpone the fly tipping, as we're a little stuck for time? Could I ask Tracy, are you okay for it to go forward to the next meeting?
Yeah, that's fine by me.
Okay, Alan, are you okay for it to be postponed until the next meeting?
Fine by me, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, are you okay for it to go forward to the next meeting, fly tipping?
I'm happy with that. I would ask that if there is any more information available by the time of the next meeting, if the report could be supplemented with it, that would be very much appreciated.
In what respect are you thinking?
Just that it talks about they looked at the 4 months before and after the implementation of the policy, but didn't think that time after that was potentially relevant because of lockdowns. But if there has been a period that is more similar to what went before the implementation of the policy, then I think that it might be relevant to include a more recent period, if that's possible. If that's not feasible, then that's fine. I just thought it's worth raising.
Certainly ask for more info and see what they come up with. Thank you for that. I think it's very worthwhile on that particular item to ask. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, where are we now? Councillor Radford, are you okay to postpone the fly tipping on the agenda and move it to the next meeting?
Yes, being as it's me that's got another meeting, yes.
Yes. Councillor Seaton, are you all right for us to postpone the fly tipping until the next meeting?
That's fine. Thank you.
Okay, I think we're all covered. Thank you all very much to agreeing that.
May I, sorry to interrupt. I'm in the office today and I'm going to be chucked out in 7 minutes time. And so if you would excuse me when I have to go, I'll have to leave the meeting.
Okay, thank you for letting us know, Andrew, and thank you so much for being here today.
Pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Questions from the board?
Yeah,
Are
sorry,
there any?
I'm going to have to go as well now. I've got another meeting at 6.
Okay, James.
So,
thank you so much for being here today.
Have a good evening, everyone. Bye now.
Yes, and you. Thank you so much. Yeah, are there any questions that any members want to bring up at all in response to anything that's been said today? other than what's been said? No. May I just bring a point up? In the next meeting, we are discussing the performance pack. Could the members have a think, please, through until the next meeting, what they would consider to be worthwhile items, things that I think are relevant to how we feel about certain services. You could have a think so that when the item comes up at the next meeting, you've all got an idea of what you would like to put forward, because obviously we can't ask you and expect you to make the decision in 2 minutes. So thank you all very much. And the next is work programme. Is there anything that any of the members would like putting on the work programme, please? If there are, could you email Ed, please, so that he can make Tracy and I aware of what you would, like to be considered to go on. Thank you. Ed, is there any more that we need to discuss as regards?
I've also added as part of the work plan that that members consider what they want to see as part in terms of the performance data. I'm just having another look at the plan now. If you bear with me. Yes, we need to agree the dates, the date of the next meeting, because that's not been formally agreed yet. So 12th of May.
Yeah.
And we also need to agree the dates for the next municipal year of 2021-22, and they are written on the work plan, but I can quickly read them out if that helps.
Yes, please, and then everybody is okay.
Okay, the proposed meeting dates for the 2021-22 council year are Wednesday. They're all Wednesday, so 14th of July, 8th of September 2021, 10th of November 21, 12th of January 22, 23rd of March 22, and 11th of May 22, all at 4:30 p.m. as we have been going. So those dates need to be agreed for the next municipal year, and also the date of the next meeting, which will be the last meeting of this municipal year, on 12th of May 21.
Thank you. Tracy, may I ask, are you in agreement with these dates given, and also for the work programme with the alterations and inclusions as we've discussed today?
Yeah, that's fine.
Okay. Alan, are you okay with said?
That's fine as far as I'm aware.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, are you okay with said work programme changes and the dates for the next coming year?
Yes, I am. At one point, I'm so sorry, I'll keep it really quick. If it's only me that's affected, it's absolutely fine. I'm just aware that the 14th of July is in the first week of the 6-week holidays, and given the circumstances over the last year and that nobody's had a holiday, if there's any other parents here who enjoy the Leicestershire fortnight, it might be difficult for them to make it.
Okay, thank you for that comment. It's worth taking on board, realising it's possible it could be in Cora. Thank you. What have we got to? Yes, Councillor Radford, are you okay with the changes that's been made today on the work programme and all the dates given for the next year?
Yes, I'm quite happy with those.
Okay. Yasmin, are you okay with said dates for meetings and work programme changes that we've discussed today?
I am, yes, thank you.
Thank you. Peter, would you like to speak? Got your hand up. You're on mute.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to suggest that in respect of performance information, maybe we might bring a short paper that perhaps suggests some of the information that reflects the current context things happen in the service that members of the board may wish to consider in the future, in addition to considering any particular areas of interest that the board submit to us as well.
Thank you for that. I think that'd be very worthwhile. It'll help us, make decisions. As you are the head of these services, you can advise us better. Thank you. I think that concludes everything, apart from sincere apologies to Yasmin. I do apologise, Yasmin. I haven't formally. Sorry?
Do that first, and then I need to mention.
Yeah, I haven't formally welcomed you to the board. I do apologise. It doesn't mean you're any less welcome, or we're not really happy that you've joined us. I know we welcome you big style. So my sincere apologies, and it's really lovely to see you on your first meeting today. Thank you.
There's absolutely no need to apologise. Everybody else was very friendly.
Yeah, we're not too bad. We're not frosty or anything. We're quite easygoing and informal, which I think helps us to get to know each other and helps us to work well. I think, we've always found it that way.
I just asked Chairman, are you an officer then, Yasmin? Or
I'm not, no, I'm the independent member.
Oh, right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you all very much. I think at this point, Pete, you've got your hand up still.
Apologies, Chair, it's an old hand. I shall put it down. Thank you.
I thought I'd better ask. So at this point, I asked Laura if she could switch off the live streaming service for the next item, please.
So, Chair, we do need to just formally resolve that we can exclude the public. I don't know whether that wording is on your running order at all.
It should be.
So thank you. So if you could read out the proposal, and I don't know if it asks you just someone to second it, and then we just need to make sure everyone's happy by everyone agreeing that we can exclude the public, and then I'll turn the live stream off for you.
Thank you very much. Right, this is as asked, proposed to exclude members of the public from the meeting during the consideration of the following item on the grounds that it will involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in paragraphs 3 and 5 of Part 1 of Schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, and it is considered that the public interest in maintaining exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Could I have that seconded, please?
Seconded.
Thank you very much, Alan. Can I ask, please, Tracy, are you okay with the proposal?
Yes, that's fine.
Alan, are you okay with this proposal?
That's fine, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, are you okay with this proposal?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you.
Councillor Rutherford, are you okay with this proposal?
Thank you.
Councillor Seaton, are you okay with this proposal?
Yes, I am.
Yasmin, are you okay with this proposal?
I am, thank you.
Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you, Chair. If you just give me a moment.